The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.
It's one of my favorite shows every single week. It's called the UAB Director's Chair because he is the athletic director for your UAB Blazers, UABsports.com. He's on the left-hand side of the screen. Of course, if you're listening to this on a podcast and you're not watching it on our YouTube channel, you probably should. We probably have more people now watching our show as we do listening to it. And, of course, you can also hear the show on the TKR app, Tony Kurre Radio. So we got you covered, man. No matter where you want to find your UAB sports, you got you covered here with the UAB Director's Chair. He is Mark Ingram. Mark, what's going on? Happy holidays to you. Hope you're having a wonderful day. How you doing?
Yeah, I am. I'm excellent. Thank you. Happy holidays to you.
I mentioned we always talk for a few minutes before we get on the show. It's such a fun time of the year. It's like you just kind of throw everything out the window. Good luck being on time. Everyone's late for things. We're always forgetting things. There's so much going on. Everyone's being transient. There's shopping, and we're not remembering what we're supposed to remember, and we're missing and there's Christmas parties going on, and then you throw in the bowl season and March Madness is right around the corner. It's just a great time of the year as an athletic director. What's it like at UAB during this time of the year? Is it just festive like it is for everyone else?
Yeah, it really is. And you'll see that at our games. The dance team will dance to Christmas songs and Blaze will wear a Santa hat and stuff like that. It's fun. But we just had graduation last week. We had 20 of our student athletes walk last weekend, which is terrific. But so exams are finished here. And so the student athletes are kind of scattering unless, for example, like the basketball teams who are still playing, right? Mm-hmm. They're around. But most of the student athletes, unless they are from so far away that they can't get home, some international students are around getting treatment if they need it. But most of the kids are, at home for the holidays. So it's a good planning time. And it's a good time for us to celebrate with other people around town, other holiday parties and that kind of thing. In fact, we have our staff holiday party tonight. And so Nice. It's just a nice time to just take a deep breath and go, hey, look, we've had a good year. It's been a lot of hard work, and we've all worked hard to put on a good show and do what we do and raise money and build things and provide opportunities for our student athletes. And it's nice to just get together and break bread.
Is that business casual for the Kurre family coming down tonight?
It is. And in fact, my wife hates this, but it's tacky sweater optional.
Tacky sweater. Yes.
So there will be some people that show up in really awesome sweaters.
Yeah. Hasn't that already run the gamut? Wasn't that over about 10 years ago?
That's exactly what she said, Tony. Yeah. That's exactly what she said.
Yeah.
She's like, that's old. You can't do that anymore. I was like, I think it makes having fun with it.
Yeah. I saw a Star Wars Christmas sweater earlier today when I was up at Fox 6. From Jeremy, one of our producers. I was like, that's the ugliest ass sweater I've ever seen in my life. And he's like, well, then there you go. I got it right. I got an interesting email here from Mark in Hueytown. I was going through some things while you were talking, and I was paying attention intently, but I like to go through some emails. And he brought up a really interesting point. It's kind of a long email, but I'm going to paraphrase. We talked about expansion of the playoffs. Now, this is before the BCS era. This is where we had tie-ins to different conferences, certainly to the Rose Bowls, and we had a tie-ins and you could have co-champions and everything else. And you and I talked about this several weeks ago when you had the UPI and the AP and the coaches poll, and you had all these different ways to figure out whether someone was going to be a national champion. One of the arguments that we brought up 10, 15 years ago was that for the student athlete, this is not fair to get into a playoff scenario because the players aren't going to have time. They have finals they have to take during December. They have testing they have to take before they can take. They're not going to have time for practices. This is not fair to the student athlete because we're going to be. And I remember when we talked about adding like one more game. It was impossible. Yeah. I remember those arguments. It's impossible because, the kids aren't going to have time to study. They're not going to have, you can't ask the kids to be traveling to the Bahamas and then coming back for the next day for da-da-da-da-da. What happened? Is that all? once the TV money came into view, we just kind of blew that off, or what's it like for a student athlete right now with the probability? Well, it's going to happen a 12-team playoff next year, so we know we're going to be adding games. We know we got bye weeks, but we know we're going to be adding games. And I remember thinking to ourselves, even if you add one more week of travel for these kids, it's not fair to them, for these kids who have finals, have tests to do before the holiday season. What are they going to do with practices? How's that played out?
Well, a couple of things there, as it relates to extra games for the playoffs, for all the teams in the 12-team playoff, when they play their first game, that is the equivalent to the one bowl game.
Okay.
So remember, that game was already going to happen for a good team.
Okay.
So that's not new, and it's really not that many more. The other problem is this is such a broad problem that we have. It's a public problem. It's a court ruling and Congress problem. It's an internal problem with the NCAA membership. We only look at what is now the autonomy group that people call the Power Five or Power Four now. We only talk about them. The FCS has been doing the playoff for years.
Yeah.
They've been doing it for years. So in that conversation that you're referring to back with the BCS, that should we have a playoff, the extra game and all that? And we were like, oh, it's too much on the student athlete. What about the FCS student athlete? They've been doing it.
Yeah.
They've been making it work. And so it's just funny how we just don't have the good sense to look at the rest of our own organization and say, can it or can it not work? And how do you make it work? And as people are criticizing that we're abusing these student athletes, I guess they're okay with us abusing the FCS student athlete. That abuse is okay, but heaven forbid we abuse the highest paid ones. Yeah. Heaven forbid the ones that are given the most privilege and the most opportunity and the most exposure and the most media attention and the most everything. Heaven forbid we have them play a playoff like the kids at South Dakota State.
Yeah. I don't know how much more the NCAA can take. It started with this Michigan thing. I remember when you said the NCAA was on your campus, it was worse than having the IRS or 60 Minutes knock on your door at 3:00 in the morning. You had some major issues when the NCAA came calling, look out, because it was usually going to be multi-years. You were going to go on probation. There was going to be, I just remember when I first started sports radio 25 years ago, that was a kiss of death. Now I think people are just kind of joking when the NCAA comes on. They had this situation with Jim Harbaugh. Then, of course, so there's a contingency of politicians in Michigan saying they're going to sue. And of course, they had a hearing and that, I guess they won that, because Jim Harbaugh had to stay on the sidelines. Then, of course, you got this executive director coming out last week talking about the $30,000, for lack of a better term, stipend that every player, or at least half the players in college would get. And they're allowing some of the upper echelon teams, whether they want to do it or not. You don't have to do it, but you can do it. And it's just, and you talked to as an athletic director, you had no clue. He hadn't talked to anybody about that. It was kind of strange. Now we're finding out, and it's weird because every time we do this show, it seems like we have breaking news. College athletes who are denied the chance to play immediately after transferring a second time, can return to competition for now after a federal judge just a few hours ago issued a 14-day temporary restraining order yesterday against the NCAA. U.S. District Judge John Preston Bailey in northern West Virginia issued the order against the NCAA from enforcing the transfer rule. Evidently, of course, if you go into the transfer portal, you could play immediately. We talked about that here on the show. But now you can go into the transfer portal a second time. And if you go in a second time, you did have to wait out, I guess, a year, and now a judge is saying no. You can play immediately after that. Is this just what is this? I mean, the cats are out of the bag already. Is this just a big problem? It just got even bigger.
Oh yeah, I mean that ruling yesterday says that you could play 5 years at 5 schools, and it's just disgusting, Tony. I mean, the problem is. With that ruling is that this judge, who clearly knows nothing about college athletics and what we actually do, just like the members of Congress who really don't care. They just want to be president of the United States. This is about self-promotion. Don't misread it into anything other than that. It's self-promotion. In fact, I read an article about the judge's ruling yesterday. How about this? So during the hearing happens, and at some point he says, okay, let's all break for lunch for 45 minutes. We'll come back and we'll conclude. When he comes back, he has a 31-page document that he's written about this. Do you think he wrote that 31-page document?
No.
In that 45-minute lunch break?
No.
No. That means he had already prepared that before the hearing. So he'd already rendered his decision before the hearing ever happened. So that's a problem. And to me, for Congress and judges and any lawmaker out there, I hope they'll heed the warning that, hey, look, I'm going to drive 100 miles an hour home today. I know what the speed limit is, but hey, rules don't matter. Mm-hmm. The NCAA is an organization that we choose to join, right? If you want to join a country club, they've got rules. You can join the country club or you don't join the country club. But if you join the club, these are the rules. So we all join the NCAA knowing and acknowledging what the rules are and agreeing that we're going to obey the rules. Now, when there have been, it used to be that when there was some weird, unique circumstance that the rules did not exactly perfectly, this square fit into that square, this peg into that hole, there was a waiver opportunity for you to explain, hey, look, I know what the rule says. Here's this really unique situation. What do we do?
Yeah.
And so you could ask for a waiver. You could ask for flexibility in the rule because it didn't speak exactly to your situation. Now people just lawyer up. As you're saying, the lawyers in Michigan, there's lawyers in Florida State that the Attorney General of Florida State is it's my job to question the college football playoff. No, it's not, man. Yeah. Don't you have bigger things to deal with? Mm-hmm. And he's going to say, well, the financial impact of that institution, which is a state institution, which thus the financial impact to our community and blah, 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 blah. He's not wrong in that, but every single person that got left out that was anywhere close to the bubble or fringe of that could say that.
Sure.
Right? We say that every year of the NCAA tournament. They even go so far. The committee goes so far as to say these are the last four in and the first four out.
Yeah.
Those first four out have every reason to wish and say, wow, we think we should have been in. But there's a cutoff, man. Hey, you don't want to participate in the rules? Then don't join the NCAA. Go do your own thing. Yeah. And so when a lawmaker or a person like this judge says, yeah, but then you can't compete in those NCAA championships. Right. Mm-hmm. That's right.
And I thought it'd get easier next year because we are going to have 12 teams in. So we're not going to have, there's obviously a bigger argument between the fourth and fifth team because if you're out, you don't have a chance to win a national title. Now you have more teams that are inclusive into that. But now that I'm thinking about it, now you've got 12 teams that are going to get in, which means it muddies the waters up for 13, 14, 15, and 16, and those group of five schools, which quite frankly are going to have the biggest battle because they're going off pure ranking. If you're the highest ranked group of five team, you get a seat at the table, and that's purely subjective because it's a human element. So,
it's the highest ranked group of five champion.
Yeah.
So that's right. So that is somewhat that ranking is subjective. Yeah.
James Madison, SMU. Liberty. We can make that argument this year. How things
like Liberty getting into the New Year's Six, they would have been the representative if that went on this year. And look at their schedule. Oh my God,
it's ridiculous.
It's not even close to what SMU's schedule was.
No, it's not. So whenever you put the human element, we seem to screw it up, and then the human element tries to fix the human element, and that's called politics, and that kind of goes by the wayside. It's kind of weird. Here's Mark Ingram, the UAB athletic director. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. The other thing I want to tell you about this is and the president at Georgia said this, Jerry Moorhead, and something I read today is that it's again abandoning the academic model. We started college athletics to help promote our universities and to help people get a college degree. And by allowing people to constantly run from their problems by transferring because I don't like the coach, I didn't play as much as I want, whatever it is, or now, their collective didn't pay me as much money, or I can get somebody else's collective to pay me more money. I collected number one check. Now I can go get a second check that's bigger or different than at the first place, whatever it is. You're teaching a terrible life lesson, and that you have to fight through adversity. Failure is good. Failure is good for all of us. You've got to learn how to deal with failure because that's just life. And by moving around school to school, you're hurting your ability to stay academically eligible and ever get a college degree.
Outside teaching a horrible life lesson, and I don't think anyone would disagree with you there. I don't know how many kids are going to transfer more than once. I don't know if this is going to be an epidemic where you're going to have 50, 60, 70 kids. We know that 500 kids just last Monday transferred, or they all went in the transfer portal. It was by far the biggest number we've ever had. And I think you brought it up, over 1,100 kids now in the transfer portal, which is roughly 22% of all college football players. What is the end game here? Assuming the transfer portal doesn't change, and of course, again, the cat is out of the bag, and now this judge is giving a 14-day injunction saying that if you may have a lot of kids right now say, listen, I was thinking about transferring a second time. Well, I'm going to transfer now because this court order is basically saying, I've got this 14-day window. Perhaps they'll be grandfathered into this new thing. I don't know if that's how it plays out. And I would hope that would not be the reason why a kid would decide to go ahead and transfer a second or a third or a fourth time. What is the end game?
No, listen, there will be when the transfer portal and when it all first started, we weren't sure how many people would take advantage of it. It's grown every year. It's become more and more popular every year. The same thing will happen with this. Multiple transfers will happen at a greater rate than they do now. When you used to have to sit out, you could transfer, but you used to have to sit out a year before you transferred. Not a lot of people transferred. But as soon as that play immediately thing happened, all of a sudden they all started transferring. That's why we have the numbers. Outside
losing a great football player that you've obviously spent a lot of resources and money and recruiting and travel, what is the downside to having a kid transfer out of your program? I'm not talking about the number 3 overall quarterback at a UAB, obviously, but you do bring in some 4 or 5-star guys. So outside losing that great talent, what is the downside to having a kid transfer? Is it purely the resources and the commitment and the relationships your coaches have tried to strive to make with these kids, and it's just gone?
No, it's don't lose sight of that. Even though I realize nobody's going to have any sympathy for the coaches and the AD and the administration and whatever, but people think winning's important. And so if the coach is judged, I would say unfairly, on only winning, but it's what the public sees and it's what the public cares most about. The public, the grand public, while they will say they care about academics, they only care about academics if we're winning. If we're not winning, they don't want to hear about GPAs and graduation rates. They don't want to hear it. I mean, I've just lived through that, unfortunately, too many times, that conversation where people feel like you're making an excuse for having not had a good season. So winning ultimately is how the coach is judged. If the coach doesn't know how they're going to, if I don't know if Tony Curry's coming back next year, how do I recruit properly to replace Tony Curry with the same or better player? I don't even know if you're coming back.
Yeah.
So the portal is open right now while we are also signing kids. And so signing day is next Wednesday, but the portal stays open like another 10 days, 12 days, something like that. So I could go through the signing period, think I've got it all set, and the very next day, 8 guys jump in the portal.
Yeah.
And so now what do? So now I'm speed. Oh, and by the way, there's a recruiting dead period until like early January. So you're going to go several days and you can't communicate to anybody, whether they're in the portal or whomever, like, hey, we didn't think we needed a tight end. Now we do.
Are the days of picking the hat on the table, are those over? Are those gone? I mean, picking the hat on the table, when you have the commitments and they go to their old high school.
No, there's still kids doing that. No, there's still kids doing that. But the biggest problem, back to your question about, like, other than the relationship and recruiting, and now what I'm saying is winning and having to figure out how do you even recruit, is we're making this decision in a silo. So depending on the hot topic of the day, again, lawmaker, congressman, person from the outside, and person from the outside is former student athletes too, who kind of think they have all the answers. Mental health, that's a pretty popular topic, and team culture, that's a pretty popular topic. Well, has anybody thought about the mental health of a player who gets overlooked and gets passed over and gets recruited on top of by a transfer? They thought that they chose their school because they were going to have an opportunity after a couple of years. They would have their opportunity to be the starter, but now that guy, you fell in love with who wasn't playing as much at the school down the road. You're going to bring them in. And look, competition is a good thing. That's not, I'm not anti-competition, but we're not making these decisions with a broad view of what it is. And then the coach gets accused or told they have a toxic culture, which I think is such an overused phrase by people who just are mad that they're not playing.
Yeah.
And so they say the coach has a toxic culture. Well, when I played, I could count on it. The coaches could count on the fact when they put the schedule up for today, we're going to meet at 2:00 and we're going to do this at 2:30. We're going to this at 3:00. That the older guys in the locker room were telling me like, hey, it says 2:00 meeting. Do you know what you're supposed to wear? The coach didn't have to remember to tell me what to wear because other guys in the locker room say, hey, man, they expect you to show up in your shorts, your T-shirt, your ankles are already taped and your cleats are on. Really? For the meeting? Yeah, for the meeting. Because after the meeting, we're coming straight down here. We're putting our gear on. We're going out in the field.
Yeah.
Oh, the coach didn't have to remember all that. No. This is how the drill goes. Line up over here, not over there. You line up here. This is how we line up. This is how the drill goes. Hey, when you run through that thing, then you pick up the dummy and you move it over there. And then when he picks up, and then he moves it over there. And you, like, other guys showed you how to do it. Tony, they can't do that anymore. You know why? Because the other guys don't know either.
Yeah.
Because the older guys were at Oregon and Texas and Mississippi State and Mississippi Valley State, and they were all somewhere else. They don't know what to do. So there's this whole culture problem because it's not that the kids are bad. The kids haven't done a wrong thing, but the system in place creates an environment where no one knows how to act. So you're having to retrain literally every single thing every single year, not just here's today's practice schedule and let me teach you the plays. It's you're having to completely retrain how we dress, how we eat, how we walk, how we talk, where we line up, when do we get here. Early is on time is late.
Well, what's really unfortunate about this situation too is that, again, I've said the cat is out of the bag, and I've said it about 16 times in this interview. There's no reverse here. I mean, we've allowed money to be changed hands. So that's out. You can't take the money away. So that's done. It's like we've made all these decisions before we actually thought through these things to actually put some type of regulation into what we were going to do. And for lack of a better reason, the NCAA seems like they were being pushed up against the wall, and they're just going, well, we'll do this. Well, we'll do this. And we'll do that. We'll do that without even thinking through the process. And with this transfer portal now, with this judge saying you can transfer multiple times without having to sit out. That's not something, 2 or 3 years down the road. Well, we changed our mind. We decided from here on out, you can transfer, but you're going to have to wait another year. That's done. I mean, it's done. There's no way that you're going to go back to the old way. And there were some good things about that old way of working. And it protected the college athlete. It protected the schools. It protected, for lack of a better reason, it protected the NCAA from a lot of different situations. So, I feel for you. He is the athletic director for the UAB Blazers at UABsports.com. Check out their website. Basketball games. I know we got a bunch of basketball games coming up. I'm going to be going to a couple games next week. It's the holiday season. Perfect time. We get 2:00 tip-offs. We got all kinds of great stuff going on. It's going to be fantastic.
Thanks for bringing that one up. The 22nd versus Drake. And you remember old Nick Norton?
Oh, yeah.
Great point guard for us. He's an assistant on the Drake staff, so it'll be fun to have Nick back. But yeah, come back. It's that next Friday, that 2:00 game against Drake. We're trying that out. We think that could be fun for people whose kids are home from college and that kind of stuff, and kids who are out of school. Gives mom and dad something to do with their nice activity before the weekend. Different time of the day. So
love it.
Trying to get out of the house. Here's a great time to
I'm
do
doing
it.
a father-daughter date that day. We're going to go to the basketball game at 2:00, and then we're going to go out and have a nice dinner afterwards. So it works out super good. I think there's a bowl game later that night, so the old man can sit in his chair and watch some bowl games too. So great stuff. So speaking of the holidays, I don't know. Maybe it's because everyone is in a festive mood, and everyone's kind of like, we're a little lackadaisical and being on time, and people are moving around. I'm sorry, I got a Christmas party that night, and this is changing, and I got to blow this doctor's appointment off. And it's just kind of a fun time, and everyone's just kind of working, half-ass, for the rest of the year, which I absolutely love. But music always seems to be a big part of my holiday season. And I go all the way back to when I was like 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, when I used to listen to the radio all the time. I used to hold the transistor radio up to my ear. I can remember the first time I heard Billy Squier's Christmas is the Time to Say I Love You on MTV. I remember seeing that clip. I thought, what in the world is this? This is fantastic. I remember my brother, when I was 14 years old, gave me Ozzy Osbourne's Diary of a Madman album.
Ooh, it's a good one.
I know. And I remember my dad looking at him going, what the hell did you just give your little brother? Yeah. Because that album had blood coming down his face. Yeah. And of course, my mom, who was a good Christian lady, she about lost her brain. What have you brought? He might as well have given me a Playboy magazine for Christmas, for God's sake. She's like, what are you doing bringing that into the house? So I remember all these wonderful moments in my life. And I remember the first album that I ever got was over a Christmas season. We were selling candy bars for the Lakota Marching Band, and I sold 100 candy bars. So I got to pick out an album, and I picked out Southern Wild-Eyed Southern Boys from 38 Special. It was one of the first albums I'd ever gotten. I got that album free because I sold over 100. And of course, if you remember the cover of that album, there was a reason why I picked that cover. It was just a fantastic cover. It was a wonderful cover. And the album is fantastic too, by the way. But for some reason, I remember a lot of wonderful classic rock moments in my life around the holidays. I wanted you to share, if you have some special times. Maybe you saw Trans-Siberian Orchestra one year and you heard a song from Quiet Riot during one of their shows that really tweaked your interest. But give me a couple of nice Christmas memories here throughout the holidays when it comes to classic rock.
Well, so I would not have brought that one up, and you said Quiet Riot. I immediately thought of this. So I'll give you two good ones. So I was in college, and it was this exact time of year, is what you're asking about, and Quiet Riot was playing in Knoxville. We usually stayed and practiced until about like the 22nd or 23rd of December. We would practice for bowl prep, and then we usually had to be at the bowl site either the night of the 25th or the 26th usually. And back then we would stay for like a full week. Yeah. They don't usually, I think the playoffs games, maybe they do a full week, but most of these bowl games anymore, it's more like 3 days. But this was like a legit full week, and we would play on January the 1st. And so anyway, me and my roommate and a couple other guys, we saw that there was this place, not nearly as nice as like Iron City, but a place like that. And when I say not nearly as nice, like not nice.
The Nick, nice.
And it's called the Electric Ballroom, and in a not great part of downtown Knoxville, or not great at the time. Anyway, so we go there. And
is it still open? Awesome. Is it still open?
I don't know. I haven't visited the Electric Ballroom in a while.
We need to go back, yeah.
But anyway, so we go, and we're like, this is going to be the best ever. There were like 70 people there. Let's say this place holds like 1,500 people standing up. Yeah. So it's a pretty good size, like warehouse. And there was like 70 people there. They were awesome, but we had such a laugh over the fact that there was like nobody there. So that was a good one. And
this is Quiet Riot you saw play there?
Quiet Riot.
Was this during their heyday, or was this before they were? So
no, this was after their prime. I mean, this is like early to mid 90s. So they were still popular, but they were like super popular like 10 years before.
Gotcha.
And now they were just sort of still playing, trying to keep it together. And,
Gotcha.
And all of that. Another thing is, so my birthday has always been insignificant to me because my birthday is December the 27th. Mm-hmm. And it comes and goes because of the other holidays. It just sort of comes and goes. And like, seriously, like half the time my mom will send me a text or something and happy birthday. I'm like, oh, it's today, 27th. Like I really don't. And I don't care. So anyway, and as a little kid, I got so many, like, here's a package of socks. It's your birthday and your Christmas present.
You got screwed. Yeah. You got
screwed. I got 3 pairs of socks for Christmas and 3 pairs of socks for my birthday, and a 6-pack of socks, And so, so one year, my dad, it was in the radio business, as you know, he we were living in Virginia, and Roanoke, Virginia was like 45 minutes away, and they had this big civic center, and they would have, great concerts and stuff that occasionally we would go to. And so he got tickets for me and some of my buddies to go to this thing. It was motorcycle racing on ice.
Oh my gosh.
Which it sounds dangerous.
Sure.
Because it is.
Yeah.
And it was just, they would race around like the equivalent of like a hockey rink.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just going in circles, and for like 2 hours, all and people sliding all over the place. And we thought it was awesome, right? I was like 10 or something, and oh yeah, my buddies thought it was the coolest. So we thought it was the coolest thing. I look back and I'm like, this is the stupidest thing I ever saw in my life. But at that time, we thought that was just awesome. It was a birthday thing at the holidays, so it was kind of funny.
That's hilarious. I love it. And the idea of seeing, I guess, with Kevin DeBro, is that the lead singer for Quiet Riot?
Yes, God rest his soul.
Kevin, God rest his soul. He's no longer with us. It's funny.
It was everybody. It was and they were really Carlos Cavazzi, their guitarist. Like they were all like. They were spot on. They sounded.
Rudy Sarzo? Was it Rudy Sarzo?
Yeah, man. Good memory.
Man, it's amazing too because, and I can remember looking at that album cover and seeing their pictures on the backside. It's funny because, like you said, about 8, 9, 10 years after their heyday, you had 70 people showing up, like the Iowa State Fair to see this band play. And now, if they would go to Iron City, you'd have 3,000 people show up to see Quiet Riot, even without their lead singer. I mean, it's just amazing. The resurgence of that and just how alive and well that genre of music is.
Yeah, my daughter last year got me tickets to a Van Halen tribute band at Iron City. That's what she gave me for Christmas. And their show was on like January the 3rd. Mm-hmm. And it reminded me of this Quiet Riot show. And the tribute band, by the way, was really, really good. They sounded awesome. And they had a guitarist who was like 17 years old, this kid who just killed it. And he, like, note for note, really fantastic, which was amazing by itself. But there were like, I don't know that there were 50 people there. The day, it was just a bad date, around the holidays. They were great, but I went and we thought, again, it was going to be this sort of crowded. It just wasn't.
Sometimes. I think there is an AC/DC tribute band called Bon But Not Forgotten. Which is coming, and there's also another one called Angus Con, as an Angus Young, that's coming to the Birmingham area. Just in case you want to go see some AC/DC.
There's a Black Sabbath tribute band called Brown Sabbath,
right?
And they're good. They're really good. They're really good.
That is great. All right, we'll catch up next week. Go get yourself some basketball tickets. It is bowl season, just a wonderful time of the year. It is one of the best times of the year for sure. UABsports.com. This is the UAB director, Mark Ingram. He joins us every single week right here in the UAB Director's Chair. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
No pleasures.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.